Hey guys, this is part 4 of my series on Yamato vs. Iowa. This part is about the main meat, the best part of a battleship, which is its guns and its heavy-ass armor. And so this will be comparing those aspects of the Yamato and Iowa class battleships. We'll start off with the guns, because that's, the big part of battleship, the big guns. In terms of numbers, the guns, main armament of the two battleship classes were pretty much equal. They had 9 guns arranged in 3 gun turrets with 2 aft, 1 forward. Pretty similar layouts. And so the difference is mostly in the performance itself. Now the ranges of the guns, there was a difference. In terms of range, the Japanese shell was Japanese gun was around 3 kilometers more longer range than the U.S. gun. But that isn't really a big difference, because at those ranges, like beyond 40,000 kilometers, 40,000 meters, sorry, 40 kilometers, you aren't really gonna get a hit against an enemy warship that's moving around in a big ass ocean with wind everywhere. So range is only a factor when comparing their usefulness as shore bombardment, ships, or for ground support. Well, same thing really, but And so the main important difference would be in terms of penetration and explosive power. In terms of penetration, we don't really have historical evidence to compare these two vessels, because they only were used against, historically they were only ever used against destroyers and light cruisers at most, unless you count escort carriers as being heavier armored than light cruisers, but that's really subjective thing. And so in historical performances, they only really pierced right through the armor of thin-skinned destroyers, and so there isn't information to be compared in terms of their performance against battleship-sized targets with battleship-sized armor. So we have to rely mostly on calculations. And these calculations state that the guns on board Yamato had a bit better penetration than those on board Iowa, but not by much. And this mostly came from the larger size, which in turn meant a much heavier projectile, around a couple of 100 pounds heavier, and a slightly higher muzzle velocity. And so the main difference, even more specific, is the difference in the shells, more specifically the amount of explosive material they carried and the quality of that explosive material, or explosive filler if you want to be more technical. The Japanese shell used an explosive called TNA, which was about 10% more powerful than the explosive used on board the US shell, which was explosive D. There was not only that, but the fact that the Japanese shell carried around twice as much more filler in terms of weight, or actual mass of the filler, than the US shell, which meant that the explosive power, the raw explosive power of the Japanese shell, was around 220% that of the US shell, which would be a big difference if you're talking about a shell blowing up inside the main important vital guts of a ship. Now, I don't want to get too technical into the calculations that were involved, post-war, because a lot of times these calculations turn out to be completely wrong in actual combat situations. These are our best guess in terms of what these shells can do against this armor, but it's not really reliable when talking about real life situation. It's mostly about speculation. But I'll go over it anyway. Now, armor is where it gets even more iffy than radar, because the Iowa class battleship has a 1.75-inch thickness SDS plate around, or on the outside of the main armored belt. And there have been multiple reasons given for the existence of this plate. Some say that it's just anti-splinter protection against nuts and bolts and other parts of ships that might hit the ship, that might hit Iowa during a battle, and others say it is a decapping plate. And they say that a decapping plate would take the main brunt of an incoming AP projectile, break the cap off, and make the projectile a lot less deadly than if it had the armor-piercing plate, or armor-piercing cap. But despite this claim, there is some historical evidence against this fact, and that is the performance of the USS South Dakota against Japanese warships during the Battle of Guadalcanal in 1944. The South Dakota or Sodak class and the Iowa class had pretty much the same armor scheme, except for the fact that the Iowa featured an extra 0.25-inch thickness in the SDS plate. They both had the same 12.1-inch main armored belt, along with an outside layer of SDS, or supposedly a decapping plate. But once we actually, what's the word? Examine the effectiveness of this decapping plate in actual historical performance, it doesn't really look very effective, if it even was a decapping plate. And without further ado, the evidence to show for this is what happened when a 203mm 8-inch shell from a Japanese heavy cruiser hit Sodak during the night battle of Guadalcanal in 1944. According to post-battle analysis of the damage that was done to Sodak, it was concluded that an 8-inch or 203mm shell from a heavy Japanese cruiser went through the decapping plate, which was supposed to knock off the AP cap, and then went through a further 7 to 8 inches of the 12.1-inch main armor belt, and then still exploded and put a hole in the ship's hull or main armor belt, which really doesn't support the claim that there was a decapping plate on board any of the ships at all. It was more likely just a more mundane anti-splinter plate. As for the effectiveness of the main armor belt and the deck armor against plunging fire and normal fire from each other, I can pretty safely say that Yamato was a lot better protected than Iowa, mostly because she was designed as a full-on battleship, which meant that she was designed with an immune zone against her own guns. Not a full immune zone, but a significant immune zone. But Iowa wasn't really a full battleship, but she wasn't a battle cruiser either. She was a fast battleship, which meant that armor was sacrificed in favor of speed, and so she didn't have as much of an immune zone against her own guns, let alone the massive guns on board Yamato, which meant I can pretty confidently say that at any given range, it'd be more likely for Yamato to be able to pierce through Iowa's armor than Iowa piercing through Yamato's armor. Now, of course, there's always luck. The way a shell hits maybe like once in 100 times that that can sink a ship through pure luck, like how Bismarck did to Prince of Wales. Prince of Wales? No, not Prince of Wales. Oh God. The Hood. Bismarck pretty much sunk HMS Hood with one hit, but that was more pure luck than anything else. And I would also like to offer an addendum of sorts. In some previous videos, I said that the opening range for Iowa's engagement against Katori was around 17,000 yards. But a user on YouTube has brought to my attention that he has the documents of the AAR, or After Action Report of Iowa, which claims that the opening range for the engagement wasn't 17,000, but rather 14,000 yards, which meant that the maximum range at which Iowa to sort of hit was even shorter than the original 17,000 yards that I had believed. But I'm not too sure on that information yet. I don't know, he might have misread some statement, but I doubt it. But I'm still waiting for the confirmation and a primary document source. So I'll get back to you on that if I ever get the chance. But that's for later. This should be the second to last part of this series. The last part will be mostly conclusions, which I'll be taking the information from all 4 other parts and combining them into a single conclusion. So, but until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.